This is Teacher Appreciation Week. It's a national appreciation of all teachers and a celebration of all teachers as well. If you haven't had a chance to send an email or 23 of them to our teachers to thank them for the amazing, amazing job they're doing, please think about doing so. You have all week. All right, we're gonna give quick introductions, then we're gonna go into a presentation. I did suggest to students, and I'll suggest the same thing to all our parents as well. We're gonna hold questions until the end. So if you do have a question, particularly if it's on slide 3 or 4, feel free to jot that question down so you don't forget it. Just speaking from experience, we enabled many videos and audios and students forgot their questions. So, okay, let's go with introductions. Ms. Brand.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's Laura Brand, team chair for special education for the middle school, obviously.
Ms. Bradford.
Olive Bradford, one of the 2 assistant principals at CMS, mostly at Peabody.
Mr. Steffi.
My name is Tyler Steffi. I'm the other 49% of the assistant principal team, and I am at Sanborn.
And we have part of this panel, we have Ms. Rose, who is our technology integration specialist for our teachers, but we're going to discuss a little bit about her role in support of parents and all of this as well. Ms. Rose, do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Liz Rose. I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to help you integrate technology into your students' curriculum. Virtual learning.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So here we are. This presentation is going to be made available to all students and to our families. Following this presentation, a video of this will be shared as well. And away we go. So here's the agenda for the evening. We're going to do a quick introduction to remote learning phase 3. I'm going to remind you and share some highlights, and we're going to do some close reading of Dr. Hunter's letter that she shared out with all parents yesterday. A slide that shares what's new in phase 3, a slide that shares what's staying the same in phase 3, a consistent message to parents, one consistent message parents can share every morning to their middle schooler, student and parent support for phase 3, student expectation, a brand new Zoom and Google Hangout schedule, phase 3 in special education, credit no entry in Aspen, what students can expect next Monday, May 11th, F Day, and then questions at the end. This presentation should take about 40 minutes. I would say at around 8:15, we will have time for questions, and we are here as long as you need us, and as long as it takes to answer all the questions. Okay, so this was Dr. Hunter's letter to all parents yesterday. This just reminds you of our core values in our remote learning. These core values were established actually on March 15th when we entered in, I don't believe it was named at the time, but phase 1. Phase 1 lasted until very early April. April 6th, I believe, began phase 2. And phase 2 is currently coming to a close this Friday. So again, these are the 4 core values of our remote learning. So this was the first part of Dr. Hunter's letter. I highlighted what applies to the middle school, and some of this I draw out on the next couple of slides as well. So I'm just going to advance the slides. So here is what's new in phase 3. The first one especially is one that I think we'll see the most change in, and that is more live teaching through Zoom or Google Hangouts. There's not much peer-reviewed research about online learning and what's good practice for 6th grade teachers to teach 100% online. There is a ton of there are tons of literature reviews of peer reviewed research on those practices for high school and college. And one of the practices that is so essential in engagement, in raising engagement with students, is having more live interaction. So phase 3, starting on May 11th, students can anticipate a lot more live interactions with their classes, with their peers, and with their teachers. The next 2 boxes are something that very quietly, especially this middle box, I would say about 98% of our teachers are already in Google Classroom and using that as a platform to share the 20-minute daily assignments. For the few teachers who aren't, that may have been sharing out assignments through email, we're asking them by May 11th to have a Google Classroom. And again, to reinforce that we have all students logging into their Google Classrooms for that letter rotation day at about 8:30 in the morning. And the last one is, and this one I would say is new for about half of our teachers. We are asking all our teachers to share an overview of the work assigned for that week every Monday morning by 8:30. We're just finding through a lot of feedback that a lot of you, the parents, are giving to us, is if you have a good sense of what the week is going to look like, then you're better equipped to how to plan that week with your middle schooler, or if you have more than one middle schooler in your home. And we're going to actually share some support on that in just a few minutes as well. So what's staying the same? All teachers are posting a 20-minute assignment in their Google Classrooms by 8:30 in the morning, and ask that students are in a routine that has them ready for school around 8:30. You're going to find out throughout the course of this presentation that since we are increasing the number of live teaching opportunities for our students, if they sleep past the 9 o'clock time in the morning, they may be missing their live classes. So I've heard from some parents who are saying, well, one of the advantages of being an online learner is you kind of have an extended window to pick and choose when you might be your best as a learner. And while that might be true, especially with the 20-minute assignments that are being pushed out, certainly whenever a school is looking to set a schedule and offer live teaching opportunities, we want to make sure that no student misses those opportunities. So that 8:30 to 9 o'clock window, checking Google Classroom, as you're going to see in a couple slides, is so critical. And finally, we continue to have a commitment as a faculty and a staff to have assignments that take students off the computer. Like every time I advance a slide, there's a different way of doing it. So quite honestly, it's 7:42, and something happens to me around the 8 o'clock hour that I just stop listening, even to myself. And everything starts getting very confusing and overwhelming. So here at 7:42, the most important slide. So I'm titling this slide, Too Many Changes. Please share one consistent message that I can share with my middle schooler these last 7 weeks so they don't miss out on any assignment or their live Zoom classes. So in about 3 slides, we're going to share with you a Zoom and Google Hangout live teaching schedule. Quite honestly, it is something you can print out and put on a refrigerator. It's something that students can commit to their working memory. But if you don't print it out, if you don't memorize it, all students have to do is log into their Google Classroom by 9 a.m. and their teacher will remind them to whether or not they're going live for 30 minutes that day, or if it's tomorrow, or if it's later in the week. So this is the most critical message, I think, from the parent perspective of the presentation. Student and parent support for phase 3. So sometime this weekend, I will be sharing out the URL to this website. This is a brand new website that we are rolling out to all our parents and our students this weekend. It's an extended We're calling it an extended closure website that has many resources here on the left-hand margin. Resources such as this resource that was pushed out, I want to say about a month ago, from the Director of Teaching and Learning. It's this one right here. That shares many, many enrichment opportunities. So our Director of Teaching and Learning put this together, and it really is an anthology of some websites that were vetted out and that provide enrichment opportunities. And again, you can find this on this website. If the parents listening in right now remember that this was a resource, then, you know, to find it, you would just have to find an email from me or Dr. Hunter maybe 42 emails ago. So that's why the website, I think, is so important as well, because it provides safe haven for all these resources. The students' extended school closure resources and the parent student closure resources that you can find right here. These pages are not updated yet. This is where Ms. Rose is really going to help in putting on a lot of videos, a lot of videos of our own staff navigating Google Classroom, a lot of shortcuts and hacks to Google Classroom. Ms. Rose is going to be talking a little bit. Actually, Ms. Rose, why don't you share a little bit about the role that we're looking for you to take in support of our parents starting on Monday?
Excellent. Well, again, I'm Liz Rose, Instructional Technology, which traditionally means I support the teachers, but in this new world, I am supporting you as well as much as you need. I'm working with Mr. Cameron to, we created a Google form. We're just tweaking the final details. We're going to send it out to you. Really just a questionnaire to see how comfortable you are with this new platforms, how engaged you think your student is, anything you would like to be more familiar with. Aspen has some new kind of things, elements to it that we're adding. So I'm really just trying to gauge how you're feeling right now, academically speaking, as it involves you as a parent and also your child and their own learning process. But yeah, and I am, traditional. I'm also a teacher. If you're a parent of a 7th or 8th grader, I most likely I had your student in coding class, which is really exciting. So, and we are slowly phasing that out now. It's optional for my students so that I can really support the teachers with this new technology and really support the parents. So I have Justin, Mr. Cameron may be more available, so I am available to you. So hopefully we can have a great relationship in that way.
Great, thank you. There's a school committee meeting that happened, I think, last week, and a school committee member, Heather Bout, mentioned in just a stream of conversation that she found a way for herself as a parent to get a review of all the assignments that teachers were assigning on Google Classroom. And from that one comment, I received maybe about 12 emails about how do we do that? So that is the type of resources that we want to provide and have available. The other thing that I want to draw attention to, and then we're going to get back to the presentation, is starting next week. You heard me mention about 10 minutes ago that teachers are going to start pushing out on Mondays an overview of the week. And what we're going to be doing with that overview is actually doing, Mr. Steffi has a team of tutors who are going to be doing just really a huge copy and paste project between the hours of 8:30 and noontime on Monday. And on this website, starting next week, is going to have links right here to the 6th grade assignments, 7th grade assignments, and 8th grade assignments for the week. The only asterisk that I will put on this is the fact that sometimes plans do change. So this site and this resource is going to be available to parents and students and it's going to be such an essential support for our special educators and our tutors as well. Around noontime on Monday, the best way for students to stay close to their assignments is still to go to their Google Classrooms. This is only meant to give kind of an overview of the week. You do see it broken down per day, and those teachers that are able to actually put their assignments per day, stick to those assignments, I think you're going to find that this resource can be valuable to you. So again, this will be updated starting on Monday. Mr. Seffi, do you want to share anything quick about these resources?
I think you pretty much covered it all. It's supposed to be your sort of distilled down version of what's going on. And so while some of those assignments on there right now might be pretty detailed descriptions, the goal is just for us all to feel empowered to know what the expectations are starting on Monday, looking forward through the week.
Yep. And the reason why some parents right now are only seeing, I know it's Tuesday night, only a Monday assignment assigned, that's because we're still in phase 2. And for this particular math class, this teacher only posted her assignments for on Monday for Monday. But all teachers are asked starting this coming Monday on May 11th to post an overview for all 5 days. The other, very quickly, the other resources available in this new CMS extender closure websites, the daily announcements. And then I was going to use this opportunity to share some important dates that are coming up, but I just want to be mindful of the time. So I would just ask all teachers, all parents to review the upcoming dates. We have many events that are coming up, many special events. I'll put an email together tomorrow that gives some highlights of that as well. Okay, student expectations in phase 3. Mr. Steffi, I believe this is you. Or is it Ms. Bradford?
I believe that is that you, Ms. Bradford?
I think perhaps it is. Happy to take it. So as Mr. Cameron noted, some things are still very much the same. We're hoping that students log in every morning before 9 a.m. to their Google Classrooms. Students need to be aware of which rotation day it is. You'll hear more about why that's important in phase 3, even more so than in phase 2. There will continue to be a 20-minute assignment for every class that the student would have had on that letter day if we were in school. The new piece, students will be expected to attend all live Zoom or Google Hangout sessions, and there will be one for each class that the students have over a cycle. So that's going to be important to stay on top of those schedules and make sure students are making their way to those. And then just a note about some expectations. So just as good teachers set expectations in classrooms for student behavior, we want to make sure it's clear what's really going to be best for student learning over the next few weeks as students are operating in the Zoom world. And really with those one lesson a week online sessions, it's important that time is being used the best that it can be. So making sure that students are arriving on time, thinking about the fact that they can be seen. So making sure that attire is appropriate, not wearing PJs, not lying in bed. That might make other students uncomfortable or their teacher. Making sure that the microphone is muted, using earbuds if possible. That just helps with the communication piece. It will be optional for students to enable video. For some students, that is anxiety inducing. If students do enable video, we are asking that students' whole face is visible. And even if students choose not to enable their video, there will be check-ins from the teacher just to make sure that engagement is there. And then just thinking about the fact that everything is visible, I think it's hard for anyone, and especially middle schoolers, to always remember that even though you're sitting in a room by yourself, your actions and words are impacting a group. So just making sure that students are mindful if they're making comments or saying things on the Zoom, that does need to follow class norms. And then a sort of final one about privacy. Students will not be able to record either audio or video. The teacher may choose to record, but we'll notify students if that's the case, and that will really be so other students can access that content later.
Thank you. Mr. Steffi is going to share the Zoom and/or Google Hangout schedule.
Awesome. So the biggest piece to note here that is consistent, that all of our students are well aware of, is our A through F cycle. So that cycle remains intact, and it very much is guiding a major part of our schedule for the next 6 weeks. Monday is an F day, and in a few moments I'll explain what that means and what we will be tackling on Monday as it is an F day. But we remain on our A through F rotation. What is very different is that each of the days of the rotation from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. is one content area. So if you look at the slide that's showing right now that Mr. Cameron has up for A day, which will be Tuesday of next week, it is an A day, staying consistent with our cycle. It is when all of our science classes will be meeting from 9 to 12 p.m. Each section will have a live 30-minute Zoom or Google Hangout. Now you may be thinking, when is my child going to have Mr. Robbins' social studies class? That information is determined by the teachers, and it is housed and pushed out through their Google Classroom. And I love, Mr. Cameron, that you added that slide. When in doubt, at 9 a.m., go to your Google Classroom. That is where you will find on an A day, for example, when your child's science session will be. As you can see on the slide, B day is math, C day is world language, D, ELA, and E, social studies. So that covers our 5 core areas in each day, correlating or matching up rather with a subject area. F day is when our core area classes will have office hours. And basically what that means is that starting at 9 o'clock for a half an hour each in the same order of A through E day, there will be high school and college style office hours offered to students. So if your kiddo would like to ask a question or listen into, as I said to the students earlier today, sometimes it's very helpful to listen to other students ask questions, clarify a concept. If your student wanted to do that on an F day for science, they would go to their science teacher's Google Classroom, and they would find the link to that teacher's help session, which happens from 9 to 9:30. 9:30 to 10 is math, 10 to 10:30 is world language, and it goes every half hour in the same order that the classes happen, A, B, C, D, and E day.
So Mr. Steffi, I just want to mention, that's
Yes,
going to be, that hasn't been shared out yet. So we'll push that out. We want to give that to students and to families the weekend and say, this is what Monday, May 11th is going to look like. So Mr. Steffi's talking about right here. Oops.
Yeah.
F day. And then, I just want to mention too, that some students, actually all students have at least one drop day for their world language, if not 2. Sixth graders have 2 drop days, and 7th and 8th graders have 1 drop day. If your middle schooler's drop day for world language is C day, just be aware that C day is when world language does their Zoom or their live teaching. So, I would say on a B day, those world language teachers are going to say, even though tomorrow is C day and you're not going to have a 20-minute assignment tomorrow, we're asking you to come into at least, it could be a 20-minute or 30-minute Zoom. Most of these Zoom classes are going to be focused on the content that is being pushed out. It just will be a little bit more teacher-centered versus the office hours that will be a little bit more student-centered.
And the office hours are totally optional, right?
Office hours are totally optional. And what we shared with students at 3 o'clock this afternoon, if students are in an emotionally good place, and we hear from their parents that they are able and they should be expected to attend their classes, we will be taking attendance, and we will be sharing that with our families and with parents who want to know whether or not their middle schooler is attending the live sessions or not. We're going to be sharing out that information. Okay, thank you,
Justin,
Mr. Pepe.
Justin, could I just underscore one more time what you had said a moment ago, that
Sure.
Monday is going to be an F day. So as I said to our students earlier, don't worry if you are trying to sign into your science class. It's actually pretty cool that this whole initiative starts on an F day. It's a really good opportunity to ask questions and get ready for the week. So fret not, Monday is a office hour day.
Yep, and if students wake up or parents wake up on Monday just saying, I'm too overwhelmed, what should I do? I thought they said something about office hours. Just go into each Google Classroom you have on an F day, and the teacher's stream in that Google Classroom will clearly indicate when the optional office hours will be on that day. Okay, special education, Ms. Brand.
Great, thank you. Special education at the middle school is going to continue on with what our opportunities have been. I just want to reiterate that, due to the mandated closure and the emergency, students who are on IEPs and receive services, those services now in this remote situation will just look a little bit different. And students who have IEPs will continue to work.
I'm not shushing you, Ms. Brand. I'm shushing my puppy.
I know. I'll take it though, Mr.
Sorry
Steffi.
about that.
So students who are in IEPs still have a very regular opportunity to work with their special educators and their tutors who provide support in regular learning environments and in the remote learning environments. And I'm going back a slide, which we don't have to, the 12 o'clock hour in our schedule every day is an opportunity for an hour long live learning center for students who are on ed plans. And what that looks like, special education tutors and special education teachers, and tutors are part of that hour supporting students in targeted areas of need. It's an opportunity for students to work, receive academic support, receive some support in some targeted goals and objectives that may be on their IEPs as well. It's very consistent. The frequency is there for students and for families, which is great. Special education teachers and tutors are working very collaboratively with the general education teachers in support of those assignments and in support of coordinating that work with the student in their targeted areas of need. Students who work with related service providers are also going to be having some live FaceTime and some opportunities for some work to continue, again, targeted areas of need. Annual reviews for students who are due from now to the end of the year will continue to happen. We've been having many of those since we've closed. We've been running those consistently, which has been great. And we're also moving forward with our 8th grade families of students who are on IEPs. We're beginning the transition process to Concord Carlisle and or Minuteman, depending on what school our 8th grader is rising to, scheduling transition meetings, linking the middle school and the high school, so those services are matched appropriately on IEPs. So if you're a family with an 8th grader on a special education plan, someone will be in contact if they haven't already to begin to schedule those as well. So remote learning plan for students are really just that. It's a consistent live way to work with our kiddos on their goals, their objectives, targeted areas of need in the remote situation.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Bradford, credit no entry?
Sure. So hopefully credit no entry is not a new term. This is something we have been using and introduced in a parent forum like this one a few weeks ago, and also something that has been mandated at the state level, actually, that schools move towards. So just as a reminder, credit no entry is a way for, in short, Concord Middle School to track student engagement with schoolwork during our distance learning period. For those of you who have students at the high school, our credit no entry looks a little bit different. Teachers are putting in one entry a cycle in Aspen to reflect a sort of broader view of students' participation during the previous cycle. So if a student completes at least 50% of their assignments in a cycle, that student receives a credit for that cycle. And if the student completes less than 50%, the student receives no entry. A few things just to make sure everybody's aware what credit no entry is not. It is not a grade. We are not using grades for the remainder of this school year. Credit no entry does not reflect student work on one assignment. Just to recap that, it's a snapshot of student engagement. So if a student is, if we're looking at a core class where a student's receiving 6 assignments over the cycle because they have that course 6 times every day, if the student's completing 3, 4, 5, or 6 of those assignments, they're going to receive credit. Fewer than that is no entry. Credit no entry is not a reflection of accuracy. We're really asking students to do their best, to turn in work, not to worry if they're making a mistake on a math problem. It's really about engagement and participation. And credit no entry will not impact students' yearly averages and will not have anything to do with promotion to the next grade level. We're not looking at this as any kind of punishment, but really a tool to communicate engagement to families. So that all has been happening. Teachers started using credit no entry on April 8th, but up until this point, it has been private in Aspen, meaning that only adults at Concord Middle School can see that. We wanted to use it to track trends in student participation, see where students were participating more or less, and also to be able to reach out to families where student participation has been low. And some students had questions about this previously. The purpose of this is not for anybody to get in trouble. It's really to reach out and say, what supports can we offer you? Are you aware that your student is participating or not participating as much? And what do you need? Do you need the online learning center schedule? Do you need a conversation with a guidance counselor or a home-based coach? So just really keeping in mind the purpose of all of this is to make sure we're all working together to help students get the most done during this period away from school that they can. Now, the new piece, starting with the entries that teachers make on May 12th, which is our next A-Day. So teachers are entering the cycle credit no entry the day after the cycle ends, so A-Day. Grades are going to be set to public. So the next round of credit no entry, you will be able to see in Aspen, just as you could see what used to be grades when students were in school. Parents and students can check their Aspen to see if they earned a credit or no entry on those A-Days for the previous cycle. And teachers are asked to make those entries by 8 p.m. on A-Day. So you can see for each class, and that's for core classes. For specials, where the specials teachers have many more students and see students less frequently, those entries are going to happen every other cycle. So if you're not seeing an art entry one cycle, you'll see it for the following cycle.
Hey, Mr. Seffi.
Awesome. Yep, we sort of touched on this before. The first day of phase 3 is an F day. And so students will have an opportunity to attend office hours for each of their core classes. You'll see an overview of the work for the week. And in addition, there is the document that Justin showed earlier, indicating kind of a broad view of what the homework, the work is for that week. And then, of course, the office hours is a live opportunity to meet with any or all of your 5 core area teachers. And that's going to be on Monday. I know there are going to be some kiddos who sign in on Monday ready to attend a class, but as a final reminder, or there will be more reminders, F Day is a really great opportunity to get organized. And then Tuesday, our first A Day of phase 3 will be science.
Yep, and on Sunday night or Monday morning, if you have a middle schooler, freaking out because they printed out the schedule of office hours, you can, again, share what was shared at the 7:42 hour. All you have to do is log into each Google Classroom, because Monday is still 20-minute assignments per Google Classroom as well. It's not just office hours. It's the 20-minute assignments, and the teacher in that Google Classroom stream will also share my office hours. Today is happening during the following time. Okay, we have some questions in the Q&A, which is great. You can also choose to raise your hand. I thrive on the human interaction piece of the questions. If you raise your hand, we're going to ask you to be comfortable enabling your video and your audio. That also offers an opportunity for us to make sure that we actually answer the question. We can actually ask that question to you. Ms. Brand, do you mind reading the Q&As? I'm just going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, so I'm on open questions. We have good evening, which is great. Thank you. All right, a question for later. Superintendent Hunter said that students would be able to keep computers for most of the summer this year. Does that apply to 8th graders who won't be returning to CMS next year?
That's a great question, because if they're returning to the district, I'm not going on record, but the answer might be yes to that. If they're leaving district, then I will go on record, we want our computer back. But that plan is going to be shared out along with, I'll answer this question. I believe a plan for students to come get their stuff from either the Peabody building if they're a 6th grader or the Sanborn building if they're a 7th and 8th grader is going to be shared in the next week or so as well. Again, I want to remind you, you can either type your question in the Q&A or you can raise your hand. Although I wonder, okay, so we are having.
Yep, there are some. Okay.
All right, why don't we toggle back and forth? I'll do the raised hands, but since we have 21 Q&As, do you want to ask a couple more questions?
Yep, for those people that said the audio was cutting out, if you missed something, you have some questions, either we can answer them now or you can certainly email us. Question about making sure that all students or kids have Zoom on their Mac.
So it's not an app per se. It's a link that works very well with the Apple world. So, students with their school-issued laptops should be absolutely fine.
Clicking on the invite from the teacher.
What's that? Yeah,
clicking on the
link. Yep. And I just want to name the fact that on Monday, May 11th, that should not be the first ever Zoom any of our students have ever done. Depending on the student and how the stars aligned, we've had some students that have been Zooming 4 or 5 times a week up until this point. Not all students, but some students. Ms. Bradford?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brandt.
Sure.
More questions?
Yep, there's a question about adding software to put on the kids' computers to avoid accessing things like YouTube or Minecraft when they should be working. Although we know they're not supposed to be doing anything on the schoolwork, this person hopes that would be able to be done so it could help.
Okay. I'm going to go to, I'm going to enable Ellen Hart. I'm going to promote you to a panelist, Ellen. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. It turns out I actually have a follow-up question to the Zoom thing. And I would ask this individually, but this may affect other people. I've tried it a number of times on my son's computer, and it says you have to have an administrator, like a box pops up that says you need an administrator password. And I did ask one of his teachers about it, and she thought some kids were having this problem, that it wasn't working for them. It's been fine for us because he's been able, on the few times he needs it, to use my computer. That's going to be harder starting next week because my younger son is using my computer. So I'm just wondering if there's any advice on that.
So email me following this. I will CC the tech person.
Okay.
And he can actually give you a password to override that, and we should be fine.
Oh, great. That's perfect. Thank you.
In many instances also, every owner of their computer is the own administrator on their own computer. So are you Nathan's mom?
No, Gabriel.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you look alike. Okay, I have him too. So in Gabriel's case, he would try to do his password for logging on his computer. Try that first.
Oh, okay.
Because we made it so that there's a true administrator on the computer, but also that every teacher, students, whoever owns the computer, their password should work. Sometimes if we're not on the school server, it's a little tricky, but just try that, and that should and could work.
Oh, okay, great. I'll do that. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Okay, Ms. Brand, do you want to ask another question in the chat?
Question about Zooms for teachers, about disabling chat and mics while they're speaking or talking to the entire class to avoid it getting chaotic.
Ms. Rose, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. So I'm working on a norms for, just like I made that little norms, very, very visual norms for students. We're having try to be more consistent throughout with norms for teachers, and muting all is one. And I have a very detailed, visual picture by picture on how to disable the chat and private chat so that the students may message the host, who is the teacher, but only the host. And so that really limits, kind of any kind of questions that you wouldn't be appropriate to ask or say in class, that those kind of conversations aren't happening on the chat. And if someone has a legitimate question, they're asking it to the whole group when the teacher unmutes them, or directing it to the teacher, and the teacher can repeat it out loud. So yes, there's many ways to do that, and I'm working hard to make it a more streamlined, uniform across the board.
Thank you, Liz. Ann Remington, I am promoting you to panelist, so be ready to enable your video and your audio.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Ann.
Trying to be in person since you said you liked that. Thank you all
Good
of
to see you, Ann.
so much for all your hard work and all the teachers. I'm sorry to be that parent that's asking about Google Classroom, and I get updates all the time for one kid and nothing for the other one. So is there somewhere that I go to check the settings, or where are the instructions to sign up? I don't know. I need help.
Yep.
Sorry.
So Liz is going to answer your question, and this is a plug for that website that I mentioned about 20 minutes ago. We're going to have a video on there as well. Liz, do you want to just try to answer this in under 60 seconds?
Absolutely. So you should, the teacher should have added you as a guardian, which I'm sure, but I can help you check your emails in case it got filtered. You should be getting weekly updates from each Google Classroom. And it lets you know assignments, previous assignments, and it will let you know if your student has missed the assignment or turned in the assignment, and also upcoming assignments, so you can help keep your student on track. But there's also a very detailed, Ms. Fagans did a great, like 10-minute long how-to Google Classroom video specifically for parents that will be on that page too.
Awesome, thank you. Laura, do you want to hit some questions in the Q&A?
Certainly. There's a question. We want to reiterate about how grades, this person called it pass, not pass. We talked about it being credit, no credit. And Olive, if you want to just give a quick recap about if a student gets a no credit, or, they're not going to repeat a grade, etc.
No entry. Laura.
No entry, sorry, no entry.
So we are still using credit no entry. If a student gets a no entry, they're moving forward, you'll be able to see it in Aspen. And then if a student has multiple no entries, there will be feedback from the team looking for support. We're really just trying to support students in doing the most learning as possible. So there is not a punitive end to this. The student will not have to repeat a grade. We are not, I was not as positive with the students about, what happens if I don't do any work, but really trying to support them in getting the work done, and figuring out how to help that, as opposed to punishing kids who may be caring for younger siblings or in a situation where they're not able to access that work.
Okay, great. Johnny Cole, I'm enabling you as a panelist.
Hello, it's
Hello.
working. Can you? Hi. Oh, all right. Hi.
Hi, Johnny.
Thank you for all the info this week or tonight and throughout this whole situation we're dealing with. I actually have 3 questions. 2 are kind of related. What are the consequences for not showing up for these live Zoom calls, Zoom meetings? It sounds like from your people are texting me who see me online right now.
You're famous.
So what are the consequences for not showing up? So I will admit that we are, there are some days where things go super well, and there are some days things are not going well here in the house. And we have 2 middle schoolers, and I can imagine there will be times when we have 2 full-time working parents trying to work from home, 2 middle schoolers, that they're not going to make it on the Zoom call. And I don't want to get a call every time they're missing. You know, is there an opt-out? You know, I think that's my question. And then the second piece related to that is teachers have started giving our kids clear deadlines, like this must be submitted by 4 p.m. today, this must be submitted by 9 p.m. tomorrow. What happens? Sometimes most of the time we're able to do that, sometimes we're not. I will admit it's creating quite a bit of anxiety in the house when, you know, it's 3:55 and we're not getting that thing done yet. I would imagine that they're still going to accept it if it comes in at 4:30 or even sometimes the next day. So those are the 2 questions. The unrelated one is I'm curious what's happening around math placement for next year, since that's the only leveled course. What are you doing with that?
Yep. In terms of the participation in the Zoom live classes, you should expect 1 email, and then in that email will be a message of, you know, if you're okay with this and would like to opt out as a family to messages like this, just let us know. And it's the same with the credit no entry. You know, we've actually been very quietly doing that now for about 3 weeks. But parents can absolutely share that same message for the live Zoom classes as well. Interesting that you mentioned that some teachers are just starting to put up, you know, deadlines of 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock. We actually heard that in the 3 o'clock session with students today. You know, as a former teacher myself, the only answer I have is that teachers are being held more accountable in giving more feedback and assessing things as they're coming in. So, you know, if the majority of their class gets the assignment in by 3 and they can get a jump start on giving feedback and giving review of those assignments, and then if students who are stressed out pass it in, you know, 2 hours later, a day later, that's totally fine. Quite honestly, that's how school should be anyways. And then the third is, I forgot the third.
Math.
Leveled math.
Math, that's right. So the director of teaching and learning and the math department chair and I are meeting, I think tomorrow or Thursday, about that topic. So more to come on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Good to see you. Laura, do you have more questions in the Q&A?
I do have more questions. So you're welcome to a lot of the thank yous that we're seeing, which is great. Here's a question about F day when it's office hours, about work assignments that being pushed out that day. Will assignments be pushed out on an F day?
Yes.
Got it. Here's another really great question I'll just jump right into if that's okay. What if your child takes 2 languages, for example, Latin and French? How is that going to work with the Zoom schedule?
The world language that meets during the either 4 or 5 day rotation is what we're talking about for the Zooms. And because Latin only meets twice a cycle, it will be in the specials.
Great.
Okay, Fred Weaver, I am promoting you to a panelist. I feel like we're a talk show and we're getting like texts and callers.
Awesome.
Where am I?
Fred, welcome to the Hillman Morning Show.
It's
Hi,
actually,
Lisanne.
it's Lisanne, not Fred. I'm just using his computer. I had a quick question about, so my understanding is that the assignments now are published for the full week versus daily to our students. And what was the communication to them about expectations about working ahead versus executing on the day of the assignment?
Yeah, so this is where it gets tricky, because we're really trying to be clear with our teachers and what they're supposed to be posting on a Monday morning. But I'll be honest, I think some teachers who are just, and I think I said this about a half an hour, who are just so prepared, you know, they might actually post the actual assignment. The ask we're giving teachers is just to share an overview of what the week looks like. So that, you know, and I can speak as a parent myself, this is currently happening in both my daughter's classes. We have a chance to organize ourselves as a family on Monday. And we can say, you know, okay, it looks like this is a math heavy week. You've been working towards this project, you know, and it seems like it's due on Wednesday. You know, science this week is building up to this awesome, and this is true of our school, this awesome Zoom experience, you know, Zoom with the scientists, you know, and it just looks like you're working on developing higher order questions for that Zoom. So, you know, we can take a breath, you know, and science can maybe, you know, go on the back seat for this week. So the messaging to the students for the teachers who are actually pushing out the actual assignments is just, you know, be cautious, because, you know, what you might end up doing is doing an assignment that the teacher thought they were giving for Thursday, but things change.
Right.
You know, and, you know, so we're really working with our teachers to make sure it's more of an overview and not the actual assignment.
And is that and just to follow up real quickly, is that what the students understood today at 3 o'clock as well?
You know, that's a great question, because again, you know, I am getting some feedback from students, and, you know, I received maybe just 3 or 4 emails about the website and, you know, the excitement about going to like their team page and seeing it all instead of going into like 6 individual Google Classrooms. You know, that page, we actually made that page for our special educators and our tutors. It's just, you know, the overwhelming consensus, even with the teachers, are like, well, since the page is made, let's make it available to our parents and to our students as well. We're going to stay very close to whether or not, you know, if for some reason students aren't signing into their Google Classrooms every day and going to the website, then we might have to adjust.
Great. Well, thank you. I mean, it's appreciated from the parents because it's nice to be able to track along to understand what they're doing. So that's useful to us as well. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great to see you.
You too. Bye.
Ms. Brand, some other
Well,
Q&A?
that's a question. Yeah, here's a question about asking if the library can provide any lending services during this time, about books
Well,
being
it's a mixed bag because I want to know.
picked up and or dropped
I
off.
don't want her to feel obligated to like.
Yep.
There we go.
In fact, they do. So a part of the website that I have and a part of the Concord Middle School website is, in fact, how students can check out books, ebooks. Was it asking about ebooks? It must have been, right, Laura?
Well, it was asking about a pickup and drop off time outside the building. So it sounds
so
like
physical books.
physical
I'm sorry.
books, which
Yeah.
is not a lost art, but I'm not sure it's something that.
Yeah, well, I can absolutely, you know, I share in that same thought. I do much better with the physical book than I do an ebook.
Yeah.
I don't think at this time we have the capacity to actually make that happen. I love the energy behind it, though.
Yeah.
Another one, Laura?
Certainly. A question, is music optional?
Music is not optional. None of our specials are optional. You know, if a parent emails a guidance counselor or their music teacher or their FACS teacher or even their English teacher or me and shares, you know, the struggle is real and we just don't know how to do it all. Here's what's also happening in our lives. That's where we just need to hear from you, and we're going to devise a plan of setting priorities, with your classes.
Yep.
Quite honestly, if we hear from you and your middle schooler is very capable, then everything is mandatory. I'm going to promote Zark to panelists.
Hi, thank you for everything that you're all doing. A quick comment and a quick question. The comment that I hear from my son is that the teacher who is most engaging him is one who also asks on a very regular basis for feedback from the students about how class is working. I thought that was interesting and just wanted to pass it along. And the question is about the crossover between Google Classroom and Google Calendars, and is there the ability for parents and students to subscribe to a particular teacher's section, class section, such that any Zoom meeting or live event would be generated, would have generated a calendar event that would then generate notifications to us on our phones and other devices.
Liz, do you want to answer when teachers assign things in their Google Classrooms? I think they have the capability to then mark that as an event that would be synced into a student's Google Calendar. Is that correct, Liz?
Exactly. If you assign a due date, if you just assign an assignment and Google Classroom asks a prompt for a due date, and if you choose to not, if you leave it blank, if you forget or whatever, then it won't go to Google Calendar. But when you have the due date, Google Calendar is great. It syncs right with your Mac. It will give you an alert. This is happening tomorrow. So yes, and I will, when I'm kind of doing my boot camp with the teachers on their Google Classroom, their Zoom, will be very adamant about that, because Google Calendar, I put everything in my Google Calendar, and it's so helpful, and it's really helpful with reminders, which I know everyone can appreciate. So yes, I'll make sure that the assignment in Google Classroom has a due date that will go straight to the Google Calendar, so that the student doesn't have to put it in there themselves.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I also heard, things that maybe the school offers can be sent out as a Google Calendar invite as well, so it can sync right into parents and kids' Google Calendars. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, other questions in the Q&A?
Question about that if someone missed this presentation either tonight or earlier today, will the recording be able to be shared?
Yes, they're very large recordings, so I just need to feed them into the YouTube machine and get them as a YouTube video, and then make sure turning the comments off is something I've learned recently.
Great. I have a good question about office hours right here. If we can, will office hours be individual? Do kids request to make an appointment during office hours so they can have a few minutes of a focused individual attention? Or is it a group office hour?
So it's a drop-in. So, if nobody is in my Zoom office session, and let's say this was my kitchen, I might be back there, pouring a cup of iced tea or something, and then noticing a student who logs in. If the conversation is more focused on the student and another student logs in, to me, that seems awfully familiar to a teacher who's in their prep period, and a kid walks in and says, I have a question, on the homework tonight, and another kid walks in, so I think teachers are incredibly nuanced and gifted at realizing when a conversation needs to end because there are other students who might be attending the office hours. But then also, and I think Mr. Steffi said this earlier, if one student comes in, asks a question, and then 4 more jump in, the teacher actually might restate that question for now the 5 who are in the office hours. In your question though, do students need to make appointments? No, they do not.
Okay.
I'm going to promote Heather Bout as a panelist.
Right.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Heather.
Hi there. Good to see you all. Okay, so here's proof that just because you're a school committee member doesn't mean you know the answer to all the questions. Thank you all for doing this. It's really helpful, and we had a couple of questions here. Mostly wanted to understand a little bit more about the Zoom classes for specials and how that schedule works. So each day, I understand that they can log on at 9 and see what they have that day, but looking out for the week, for instance, how does the schedule for Zoom for specials work?
Yep, so we're still figuring that out, and we might share out a more detailed schedule for that 1 to 2:30. But I'll go back, that's okay. But I'll go back to the, the piece about, if my 7th grader has PE on D-Day, then just like on March 18th, when this all started, or March 16th rather, students were asked to log in, if they have PE on D-Day, to log into their PE Google Classroom on D-Day. And again, it will be there. It'll be right there, front and center in the stream. And it will say, feel free to come. Office hours are optional. This is optional. Office hours are today, at 1:15 to 1:45. Or the PE class might say, we're doing something live in a Zoom, at 2 o'clock to 2:30.
Okay, so they'll find that out in the morning when they log on.
Yes, and again, I just have to promote that as the most important thing, because whatever we put out there on schedules, if people, put that on their refrigerator and live and die by that, so many things just change. And that daily, that daily, going in at 8:30, between 8:30 and 9, and saying, well, I thought I was going to do something live today, but my teacher just posted that, her 3rd grader is sick, or, and she's not going to be live today, as, the refrigerator said she would.
Great, thank you. Any other follow-up questions? Okay, I think that's all we had. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brand, more Q&As?
Yes, and there were a couple questions that I think were just answered regarding the specials, but I'll jump ahead because there's a couple that are similar about some of the technology around the Macs. Regarding the use of computer, can they get a password to install apps for learning or printer drivers at home? Another question about the Zoom, Liz, that you spoke about not being able to get it, or printing at home.
Yep. So so it's not ideal because it's not the same for everybody, but ideally if we were at school, it absolutely would be, but just the way it is right now. So every student is the administrator of their own computer, so they should try to do it themselves with the password they use to log on the computer. If that doesn't work, contact myself or Mr. Sessery. His ingenious plan, since you're all Concord residents, is to go, because sometimes you need to be on the school server, is to go into the parking lot, enable your hotspot, and try it from the parking lot, and it might work there too. But definitely contact myself or Mr. Sessery before you go out of your way to do that, because I know you'll be the one driving your student to the parking lot, most likely. But yes, you should be able to. Your first step was try it, have your student try it themselves. And I know that printers have been tricky, but they should be able to install a home printer.
Liz, there was also a question, or Justin, about blocking YouTube on the school issues laptops.
Yep, they were before all this started, and we're just finding that we're pushing out content, including myself, pushing out daily morning announcement videos on YouTube. So we're just really concerned at what students might be missing and blocking that. I would say, feel free to engage, send me an email and we can engage in a phone call about whether or not exceptions have to be made in certain homes. I'm going to promote Mr. Now. Hello? Hello?
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Good
How you
evening.
doing?
Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
So my question is around the credit versus no entry. And I understand that it's based on whether or not they've completed 50% or more of the assignments that they were issued. Now, if you're expected to complete 20 minutes worth of an assignment in one class, is it multiple assignments in one class, or is it is this 50% based on? I'm not familiar with the class material, so is it 50% based on the assignments that were issued within the 20 minutes, or is this like a cumulative thing throughout the week?
Cumulative throughout the week. So it's
Okay.
if a core subject pushes out a 20-minute assignment each day, if the student is completing 3 or more of those 20-minute assignments over the course of we operate on this A through F 6-day cycle instead of the week, but sort of the same thing. That's what the credit no entry is based on. So how many of those 20-minute assignments are completed?
Thank you.
Sure.
That was it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Brand, more
Sure.
questions?
Yep. I'm gonna keep going through them. Somebody's asking why such an abrupt change in the live accountability for students.
Yep, the change, and I apologize for not saying this in the beginning, is coming from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. During April vacation, when Governor Baker announced that the extended school closure would go for the rest of the year, the state also put out what I call power standards to all districts and expectations of live interface. So we're aligning to the expectations. From a curriculum standpoint, what we're teaching and pushing out is actually since phase 2, which started again, I believe, on April 6th, is where Governor Baker wants all schools to be by May 11th. So we've been quietly there in terms of what we've been pushing out. It's really the live interaction piece that we've been asked by the state to step up, for lack of better words.
Great. Is the school able to, or is the school monitoring websites and web pages that students are on?
There's not remote access, so the answer to that is no.
Got it. Great. And another question about if kiddos are keeping laptops in the summer, will they not be upgraded?
That's a great question. I know that's something that the IT department right now is trying to figure out. That upgrade, is pretty important, especially in the Apple world. Think about how many times we're asked to upgrade, our phones to a new iOS. MacBook Airs and the MacBook family is the same thing, updates to iOSs. So we're still working on a plan for that. I do want to go back one question though, and remind all our families, and if this is an important reminder that students receive from me as well, that even though we are not capable of monitoring their websites, it is still a school-issued laptop. And even the fun that they're having on the laptop, if it's, doing some gaming and things like that, it's not appropriate, and it is in violation of our acceptable use policy. It's a very early age. Many of you know how I feel about this, to learn and social code switch between devices. This is my work phone. This is my personal phone. This is where I check the Celtics scores. And this is where I check my work email. And again, it's asking a lot for an 11-year-old to learn, whether or not they should be for fun watching a YouTube video on their school-issued laptop. But it is a very early opportunity to say that's not what this laptop is issued for. Other Q&As, Laura?
Yep. So Liz, is the same admin name and password if a child's getting in a message to update their Zoom for better security?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yes, because that's the same password, and usually they use to download it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for IEP students, who should we contact if we find that assignments are taking longer than 20 minutes? Should students just complete the assignment, or should we contact the teacher directly and discuss alternatives? Yes, definitely your special education teacher in collaboration with your gen ed teachers are your first point of contact for that. We certainly want to make sure that kiddos are able to access what they need to do in an appropriate way. Definitely use your special education teacher as a great point of contact there. What is the 8th grade graduation going to look like?
So we have a meeting with some 8th grade teachers and about 17 8th grade students tomorrow. I want to re-engage our PTG and the parents who were invested in when we were going to have an 8th grade dinner dance. So we're still in the midst of doing that planning. We should know more in the next couple weeks.
Great. If a student receives a no entry because they did not turn in work, but then turned it in a bit late, will their entry be changed to credit? Reason is that some of the work does take much longer than 20 minutes, and the stress to submit to meet the credit no entry evaluation could add additional stress.
So I think we're
looking
not
at retrospectively updating credit no entry.
The answer is no. The reason for that is these are not published grades. They're not going on transcripts. There's nowhere that these go. They're really just being used for the communication piece. So if somebody reaches out and says your student didn't complete this and you know that they have, then that's the end of the conversation and moving forward. We do encourage students to complete missed work because, again, really the point of all this is preparation for the next grade level, making sure that they're getting as much learning done as possible now so that they're in the best place possible starting school in the fall.
There's another question about just asking to go back and answering questions about blocking software on the computers.
Can I mention one tech thing? So Sean Cesare, our tech guy, is still responding really quickly to any help tickets that are put in on the CMS website. And he has some that actually he shared with parents this fall, ideas about how to, it's a blocking thing having to do with home Wi-Fi, unfortunately, not the actual school laptop, but he has some suggestions on things that you can use to limit what's coming into a laptop at home. But any questions like that or use of Google or use of laptops, he's responding to help tickets.
Great. Will there be summer school?
So a student asked that question as well. Every year, Concord Public School has in special education what is called extended, what is it called, Laura?
Extended
school year.
ESY, extended school year.
School
It's
year.
extending services.
So that will still be in place. I'm not quite sure if the subtext of this question is, will there be some sort of summer school availability for all students? You know, we're in the midst of that conversation. Certainly nothing is going to be required, but you know, we're in the midst of that conversation right now.
I'm gonna, if your child is on an IEP and they've been recommended for extended school year services, you would have, your special education teacher would have talked to you about that. If you have questions regarding special education extended school year services, you can reach out to your special education teacher about that. Questions, Justin, about when parents will have access to the new website?
This weekend?
Great. Okay, so again, this child has a few teachers who offer several Zoom classes a week, as well as office hour sessions. Will these teachers now be limited to one live class a week?
That's a great question. I don't remember where this question was brought up. So the teachers that are offering more than what next Monday's schedule is saying that they can offer can quietly still offer more. They just have to be mindful of their colleagues, and they're not providing any conflicts. You know, the after 2:30 time is an example of teachers, you know, can offer more. I would just stress to those teachers that, you know, anything above and beyond what is being asked of them has to be out. You have to get out in front with our kids that those times are optional. And, you know, if they receive a great response, that's great. To me, that shares, you know, a classroom culture that, quite frankly, you know, sometimes I miss as a teacher. So, you know, teachers will still have that opportunity. They just have to be mindful of navigating with their colleagues.
What's the expectation for communication from teachers to parents? A particular teacher was named as being amazing at communicating, but other teachers, the parent has to initiate that contact.
I can maybe take that one. So the expectation is that teachers are clearly communicating to kids about what the daily work is. And then as far as family reach out, what we've tried to do with the credit no entry is to assign each student a point person. So if a student is having a tough time in one class in particular and only one class, then the expectation is that the teacher reach out. If the student is struggling in more than one class to meet that 50% bar, then either a guidance counselor or special ed case manager, I'm missing one big bucket that I can't think of.
The actual classroom teacher?
If it's one assignment.
One assignment, yeah.
And the reason for that we're asking the point person to reach out is if it's happening in multiple classes, really it's about problem solving a system rather than what's going on in that particular class. But teachers are certainly expected to respond to a reach out if that happens, if that's part of what you're asking.
A couple questions that are specific to what will specials look like. There's a couple specific ones about what will gym look like.
Yep. So again, if a student, let's say a sixth grader, has PE on an E day, you know, they're going to be asked, the sixth grader, to log into, and I will name, I think, a couple of our PE teachers were part of that very small percentage of teachers who may have not had a Google Classroom a few weeks ago. Ms. Bradford, do they have one now, or are they waiting to debut on Monday? Do we know?
My understanding is that they have them. I don't know that they've been published to students yet.
Okay. So, you know, let's get well into phase 3. We're talking, you know, next Thursday, the following Tuesday. You know, student logs into their PE Google Classroom because they have PE on an F day, and they might find that the PE teacher is offering either a live Zoom sometime between 1 and 2:30 or live office hours. If it's a live Zoom, then it's just going to be, you know, the PE teacher offering, you know, a lesson or a demonstration of maybe that 20-minute assignment for the day. I just received an email question. You mentioned during the Zoom that Monday is an F day. My daughter's confused because today, Tuesday, is C day. So tomorrow, we're going to be sharing out a K-8 initiative. I'm not sure if it's up at the high school or not. I do know the elementary schools are doing it. Friday, we're celebrating, as a district, National Field Day. Friday will not be a letter rotation day for our students. Friday will not be a day where students will receive 20-minute assignments. So we are actually not calling Friday an F day. That information will be clearly shared tomorrow through email from me to students and from me to parents as well. Great question. Ms. Brand, more Q&As?
Yep. So is there an opportunity for special education to have one-on-one Zoom with kids? So I'll answer that, and then there's a follow-up question to this. The 12 o'clock hour where students who are on IEPs have access to their virtual help sessions or live learning centers, that's a great opportunity for students to join in, and within that group, depending on how many number of kiddos are in there or what the needs are, teachers and tutors are able to offer breakout sessions. So a teacher can work directly with a student or a tutor can work directly with the student, that's where there's a lot of that great opportunity. And that's a very consistent schedule. So there are teachers and tutors always in there for that. Follow-up question was, how much of this information was communicated to kids in the earlier Zoom meeting? I'm not sure if that's all of what we're talking about or specific to the first question about special education.
So it was the
Yeah.
same parent?
Yep, same question.
Yeah, I interpret that as, you know, how much of this presentation that started at 7:30 was communicated. Right. It was pretty much the same presentation.
Great. Is there a consequence if a student doesn't attend a Zoom class where attendance is taken, or if a student doesn't log in by 9 a.m.?
So again, that is just communication that eventually we're going to push out to parents. And we're just going to share, listen, you know, unless you tell us otherwise, you know, it's our expectation. What can we do as a school? You know, I've done some personal phone calls to students, guidance counselors have, and just reminding the students, and again, this only comes from a place of getting blessed by the parents. You know, you're capable, you're able, you can do this. You know, what can we do to potentially help or support? Now, with that said, for every phone call I've been asked to make to a student, I have also been told by a family, and it was mentioned earlier by a parent, like, we're okay in picking and choosing here because, you know, we have a grandparent that's going through this, you know, they have younger brothers and sisters in the house. You know, so once we find out what's going on in the family and in the home, that helps us establish a baseline of expectations. And then it's like we launch, we pounce, we go from there in terms of the messaging to our kids individually.
Question, are some teachers able to make their Zoom optional unless the student has questions? For example, assignments of a self-explanatory Google Doc.
I feel like that sounds like office hours, right, everybody?
Yes, it's not the class, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, this is a great opportunity to just, you know, mention the research. You know, the live interface is as much for face-to-face, yes, with the adult, but with the peers as well. And there's a tremendous amount of research. Again, this research exists more on the high school and college level, that what students are learning from each other live and the social and emotional benefit they're receiving live from being together, you know, and that's where, you know, my oldest was really struggling with her anxiety of getting on Zoom. Once she pushed through that, you know, now she's at a place where social and emotionally that can actually get her up out of bed, you know, and motivated for that day if she knows that she has a Zoom coming up at 11. And it's as much about her teacher, it's as much as the peers in her class than it is about the teacher.
Question, are electives still happening, like exploring sports?
They are not.
Okay. All right, so here's another IEP question. If a student on an IEP cannot typically complete an assignment in 20 minutes and is going to consistently not make the 20-minute 50% completion rate, will there be a different expectation? If your student is struggling or having a difficult time accessing that, I definitely encourage you to speak to their special education teacher and their general education teacher and talk about what is appropriate and how we can help that student meet the mark and engage in what's appropriate for them. Can a student get credit for completing an assignment if they don't finish in 20 minutes?
Yes.
So,
that's a sort of guideline to make sure that students are getting hour-and-a-half long assignments, right, you know, times 6, but there's no limit that the school imposes on how long a student can spend. That being said, if students feel like they've done the 20 minutes and have a lot of academics going on and want to pause in that moment, that's okay too.
Ms. Bradford, what happens when a student is on minute 74 on a 20-minute assignment, and the parent is saying, submit it, you know, as much as you have done, submit it, what does that look like for the credit no entry?
That's part of the reason that we use the 50% bar and not a 95% bar. If that's happening once in a cycle, it has no impact on credit no entry. The student would still get a credit. If it's happening every single day in a cycle, just in one class, I think that bears communication with the teacher or with a point person like a guidance counselor or a special educator. If it's happening across classes, I think that's a guidance counselor or special ed case manager conversation.
Okay.
Here's a question. Is there a possibility that school would be extended until July or August if the pandemic continues, as there would be no camp or other summer activities? This is how would parents work, etc. if there's no camp?
Yeah, you know, to the best of my knowledge, there's no conversations happening, you know, at the superintendent's, you know, in terms of a structured, you know, learning environment that continues past June 18th. I might learn more. I'm a part of a rather long meeting, I think on Friday. But to best of my knowledge, there's no plans at this time. We have a participant who's raising their hand. I'm going to promote Candace to panelist. Hello, can you hear us? Candace? Okay.
I jump in and ask a question.
Yes, please.
Is there a special support for students on 504s? This child is struggling to get her work accomplished, and the parent is struggling to help her because they're busy working, and there's younger elementary children in the house. To answer the 504 question, I would seek your child's guidance counselor for some support on that. Okay, we're nearing, there's just a few more here. I believe that students and children should be able to sleep in and not get up so early. There are studies that prove students perform better in school and are happier with more sleep.
Yeah, and you know, we're actually transitioning behind the curtain into a conversation that you know, comes from a mantra of hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. And if we're still doing virtual school come the fall, we're definitely going to have that in mind. You know, waking up at 8:30 though, to me, I don't think is such a tough ask. You know, even if kids are going to bed at 11, I feel like that's so late for this age group. You know, we're still talking about a solid 8 or 9 hours of sleep. You know, but starting things a little later is something that's up for discussion if, unfortunately, we're in this in the fall. And I'm not saying we will be. I have no intel on that.
I think a piece of that too, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, just enabling the well-being of our teachers and giving them the opportunity to have their afternoons and good solid chunks of time with their families as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the teachers who have young ones, you know, at home, who are, I'm not sure about your young ones, but my young ones are up at 6:30 every morning, ready to go.
Wow.
Yep.
5 a.m. over here.
That's what I'm talking about.
There's also the bedtime piece for adolescents, and I think this was more of a high school thing that my parents used to say, but nothing good happens after 11 p.m., you know, out in the world. But I also think online, nothing good happens after 11 p.m. So if they're up and then tired to go to bed earlier, it's not a bad thing.
You're not kidding, Olive. Will attendance be taken at the specials Zoom meetings?
Yes.
Great. And we're at the, oh no, there's a few. Okay, so there's, again, you're welcome. There's a whole bunch of thank yous for doing this. You're very, very welcome. It's our pleasure. Oh, and last question for a 7th grader, what is a reasonable time to go to bed and be up by 8:30 a.m.?
8 to 9 hours is what I've.
So what is that, 10:30? Yep, something like
I just want to give a little bit of an empathetic shout out. I have a middle schooler, and the bedtime is a constant battle that we have, and I'm not letting down. So I hear you all.
All right, we want to thank everybody. My wife has texted me, and my 6-year-old is asking her to tell Dad to stop yelling at the computer so she can go to bed.
Speaking of going to bed.
Yeah, I think she thinks that I've been just sitting in here yelling at my computer for the last 2 hours. All right, we want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to share this recording to those parents who were not able to be a part of this. Laura, Liz, Olive, and Tyler, thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Have a good night. Drive safely.
Bye-bye.
Just
Yeah.
Nice, Justin.
Great.